All righty. Hello, everybody. Come on in, grab a virtual seat. Welcome to another presentation of the online ColdFusion Meetup. I'm Charlie Earhart, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And in this edition of the Meetup, our 314th, being recorded on Thursday, April 24th, 2025 at noon U.S. Eastern, we've got Dan Wilson back again, this time to talk about AI for devs. And before we get started, I just want to remind you down at the bottom, you can see that if you want to tell people about the group, it's available at ColdFusionMeetup.com. And then the recordings of these meetings are listed easily at that URL, which is really just a shortcut to get you to the YouTube playlist. The meeting you're watching, the URL you're seeing, that is the URL that you could mark it and reuse it again. But the point is you can let other people know if they want to see this meeting or previous meetings. You can just point them to that URL and it gets them to the playlist. All right. And with that, let's turn it over to Dan now. Thanks, Dan, for coming on again. Glad to have you back. And take it away.
Hello, everybody. It's really good to see you or not. Just so that I can figure out how to tune this presentation, let me know by raising your hand how many of you are using AI on a daily basis. Very good. How many of you have used AI but aren't necessarily happy with what it produces for you? I see some hands. How many people have figured out that I can't actually see your hands and aren't going to raise them no matter what I say? And there's my people. So I built this presentation to be interactive in terms of walking through the daily life of a developer. And I really want to spend very few moments on slides and really spend a lot of time with actual demonstrations that you can use in your daily life. But I would be remiss if we didn't just cover a few basics. So here's what I do. You guys know me, but lately we're doing quite a bit of product marketing and AI consulting, helping people get started and up to speed. More on that in a bit. I do want you to really look at this slide. So this is the Gartner hype cycle. Our friends at Gartner have put together this graph for all technology. As technology kind of comes into the market, you see it down there at the bottom left, 01, some technology trigger. Then you hit this peak of inflated expectations. Anyone remember blockchain from a few years ago? I was literally at a Gartner conference working a booth, and people would come up to us and say, do you have any blockchain? And we were like, no. What do you want with blockchain? They're like, we don't know, but we want a lot of it. So that was sort of the peak of inflated expectations for blockchain. And 6-7 years later, it's calmed down. After the peak of inflated expectations, we end up in the trough of disillusionment, where all this hype that we've heard about did not come to play. And technology is just technology. It's not magic. Then we hit the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity, where the technology notches itself into daily life. And then a new technology is born, and we go through this cycle again. So keep in mind, when you hear things, we are getting close to the peak of inflated expectations, and you can't trust everything that you hear. So I want to point out that, to me, AI is like an evolution of a tool set. And people freaked out when manual carpenters saw the electric saw, and there was much weeping and gnashing of teeth and hand wringing about all the manual saw jobs that would be lost. And, same thing with the handwriters when the typewriter came around, and the typewriter people when the computer came around. And, eventually we realized that the world's not going to end, despite what we all saw in Terminator and the Matrix. And technology is a useful companion. So, if you think of an elephant, right? The elephant in the room is what's going to happen to your technology job. Like right now, you hear all this, developers are going away and these AI things can spit out full apps. And I'm just here to tell you that's not true. And we're going to see probably in this presentation, and much to my dismay, just how inaccurate AI can be. Because, an elephant never forgets, but AI has this thing called a context window. And think of it like, do you remember this game? You put in a coin and it sort of, the idea is it knocks a whole bunch more coins down. And it's like this ever sort of sliding down group of coins. Like the AI's context is kind of like that, where you put in new context and eventually you hit some limit and out the bottom kind of leaks out context that it then forgets about. Here's another way to look at it. So, think of a sliding window. So you have this sort of amount of processing that AI can handle and knowledge that it can hold in place of things that you've told it. And as you keep adding more to it, older stuff tends to fall away. All systems have limits. And I think if you listen to the hype cycle, there are no limits. It's all magic. But in real life, there are limits. So know that this happens. Also, there are problems that AI either can't or should not solve. So we've all hopefully heard of the trolley problem in our philosophy class. And, I pulled this image from Flowing Data because I think it's a little more humane than other versions of this. But, if you're building a self-driving car and, staying in lane is not a hard problem. Like that's solved. The hard problem is knowing what to do. Like if you have to either hit a cat or swerve and hit the lobsters, like what is the correct choice? Like how do you price the life of a cat? Like, do you say it's worth 3 lobsters, but not 5? And should AI make this decision? And should the AI vendor be liable for the death of the cat or the munched lobsters? Like we have not sorted through these problems yet. And while this is a little bit contrived, there are millions of little trolley problems every day where the AI really just can't be in control. So it's important to note that unlike the programming that you probably do, AI is non-deterministic. You can kind of read the comparison back and forth here, but think of a vending machine, right? You put in your money, you push a button, out pops the Cheetos. Like what would happen if no matter which button you pressed, it would just randomly give you whatever snack it wanted at the time? Like that's non-determinism. And in software development, we don't like that. In fact, we've invented whole new frameworks and methodologies to prevent variation from getting into production. But AI at its nature is variable. So there's a bit of tension here. So I would say that, for now and the foreseeable future until Skynet comes, there's going to be a need for this human being to be in the loop. And not only just a random human being, it's got to be someone that understands the full context and what we're really trying to solve for and what the implications are. Because as you'll see, like I say, much to my dismay in this presentation, AI is going to get it wrong. And, a lot of times this changes your role from the creator of something to the reviewer and validator of something. Not always the most fun role. So let's kind of work through the last bits here. So, I find that when people make mistakes in AI and they get bad results, they're usually trying to get it to do too much at once. So I've kind of built this 4-step process here where the first thing you want to do is set the focus of what you want the AI to do. Remember, it's been trained on millions and billions of things. And so, the more focused you are up front, it can narrow in and give you answers that relate to what you want. Then the next thing to do is refine that scope and narrow it so that you're getting closer to the solution that you want. When I first started using AI, I remember asking it to write some blog posts, and it wrote literally the worst blog posts I've ever seen. And I figured it was the AI's fault. And I was right. But I also had some share of the blame here by not fully understanding how to give it the right directions to give it what I really wanted it to give. So after you've refined the scope, you want to shape the format or the style. So now you've kind of distilled down the world and got it to think about the thing you want it to make or do. And now you want it to come up with what is the format or output that you want. And then you can optimize that. So I built a longer version of this. I don't really want to read through this for you, but feel free to scan it because I think it gives a little bit more detail about this process. So, once again, if you've tried AI before, like me, and you were underwhelmed, to quote the words of the wise Steve Jobs, you're just holding it wrong. So, use this process. And hey, if you like what we're covering here, I built a free course that you can take Charlie will send out a link later, but people like it, and I liked doing it. I don't know if you know this or not, but the maximum amount of time you can make a free course on Udemy is 2 hours. And so I spent half a day cutting out 3 minutes to make that limit. So just packed as much value as I could. But, I'm framing that from terms of marketing and product marketing, because that's one of the realms I'm in. So if you're managing a product or you have a startup or something, this actually could be very, very helpful for you. I won't bore you with it, but what you end up with is an AI assistant that can write and think and respond in ways that reflect your business and your product and can really accelerate what you're doing. So, with that said, we're going to go through this presentation, and I've structured it in, let's say, a day in the life of a developer. So every hour on the hour, we've got some new work to do. Now, somewhere on your screen, you'll see an ability to post comments. I do encourage you to do that. If the comment is something we should answer at the time you ask, I'll do that. If not, we may save those till the end. But, given that this can be such a broad topic, I do kind of want to hear audience questions as we go. So feel free to do that. And your first job is read this email from your boss. So, we've all had a boss that just not a great communicator. They just send a whole bunch of requests in an email, not even using correct grammar. And so this is that email that you've just received, and you're sitting down to begin your work and drinking your finest cup of coffee. And this is kind of chock full of things, although I'm not sure it would have passed my college English class. So I'll give you maybe 30 seconds to scan this and then show you the other half, and then we'll get down to business. All right, here's the other half. Now, normally what we would do is work through this line by line and make our own task list. And then, I find that to be annoying work. Maybe you're different, but I'm by no means interested in deciphering poorly written grammar. So let's get into AI and make it do it for us. So this is the interface for ChatGPT. There's a bunch of these kind of LLMs out there, and I use them all. So, you may ask me which one's better than the other. The answer is, what day is it? Because these things evolve so fast. Like when I put that course out, one of the running jokes in the course was ChatGPT kept throwing emojis and everything, even after I told it to stop doing that explicitly and many times. And literally the day that I published the course, they released an update that stopped doing that. And so that joke will fall flat. I'm not going to re-record the course to cover that up. So just consider it in a sort of archive of history. So, if you have access to an LLM, there's plenty of great stuff you can do with it. For certain use cases, some are better than others, but they're all pretty much fine, and they're all pretty much evolving really fast. So we've got this prompt here, and it says, your job is a helpful assistant for a software developer. Remember I said you want to narrow in the large language model into what it's trying to do. It can do anything. You want it to talk like a pirate? It can do that. Want it to talk like a Gen Zer and brain rot? It can do that. So we got to tell it what to do. And the more clear you are about what you want, the more clear your output's going to be. Remember, it's non-deterministic, but you do control some of this focus. So getting back to the prompt here, your job is to read an email from a manager that's rushed, messy, and poorly written. I don't know if the AI needs to know that or if that's just catharsis. But extract a clear task of the developer's task for the day. For each task, if there's missing or ambiguous information, identify what needs clarification, then output the following sections. A clean task list. Yes. Questions for clarification. Interesting. And a reply email draft. Not bad. So why did I say that? I bet if you paid me enough, I could write an application that would read this email text and come up with a task list. I'm pretty sure I could do that. It would probably involve a lot of regular expressions. I am not so sure that I could tell which tasks needed more information. So I find that pretty fascinating. So I've pasted this prompt in here, and let me just go upload the email from the boss. I have it in Word doc, but you can have it in lots of different formats, and we'll push the button and see what we come up with. So you can see it's figuring out our task list. There's a number of tasks here that are pretty exciting. Now, if I keep going, I can see here is the questions for clarification. Now, I think this is pretty nice. Remember I said, as a human, your job is to review the work done by the AI. The very last thing you can do is just trust it knows what it's doing. And it gets so close that you'll get lulled into that. But you have to validate. And so now I would go through these and kind of validate this is what it is. And here's my reply email draft. So it wrote a note back to the boss, kind of worked out the task list, asked a few clarifying questions, and you can see it's even offering a few helpful things as a next step. Like, do I want this as a Slack update or a Markdown doc? Or am I shoving this into a ticketing system? It usually knows the quirks of those systems and can help the formatting. I often find that I spend a lot of time reformatting things, and using the AI in a correct way can really help that happen. So we've seen here how we can take what is messy, I hate to call it data, but let's call it data just for fun, and turn that into something actionable. So it's 8 a.m. I've parsed my boss's email. I know what I'm doing today, and I think I'm ready to catch up on my first task, which is, why don't we notify the product team of what's going on? So I'm going to paste in another prompt. Let's see how I can get you folks to see this. Kind of is what it is. So I say, you're a helpful writing assistant supporting a software developer. Your task is to rewrite a rough set of notes into clear, concise, and professional email for the product team. Focus on clarity, brevity, and appropriate tone. Expand short items for context. Use a confident but neutral tone. And here's the input to work with. Now, look what I put in here. This is really important. I just gave it JIRA ticket numbers and titles. And these titles are very developer friendly, meaning they don't make a lot of sense to product people. Like, we all know what a stale cache refs is, but do they? So, why this is important is, as a developer, your job is to communicate. And communication is not as logical as software development. And flipping back between one mindset to another creates mental friction and can actually be, I consider it to be annoying. I don't like switching back and forth. I like staying in a flow. So let's make the AI draft our product email. So I've pasted this in, given it minimal information. Let's see what it comes up with. Now you can see it knows stale cache refs are stale cache references, way more product team friendly. So in a handful of moments here, I now have a copy paste email that I can send to my product team. If I want, I can keep going here and ask it to give me this in Confluence so I can put it in there, but we don't need to do that. I think just letting the product team know what's happening is good enough. Now, the next job we need to do is fix some ColdFusion code. So let's do that. This prompt is going to be super simple. I'll just say new task. You're a senior software developer who explains or analyzes older code for teammates. Your task is to examine this code and report any logical deficiencies or bugs. The code is attached, so let's in fact attach it. And I'm going to show you this code too, because I think that will be useful. I'll let you kind of think through it. So if you look at this, if you've been around long enough, you've written this code and you've been embarrassed by this code, but it starts with CF params up top. Then we do our validation right in the same line. Then we cowboy the data right into the database. you've ever been to my presentations, you know I love this syntax. And if it's all good, we say, yay, thanks for your feedback. And if it's not, we put all the form stuff back in the form and let someone resubmit it. Pretty basic stuff, wouldn't you say? So if I go back to ChatGPT, let it kind of figure this out here. Notice it took almost no time to do this. Excuse me. The first thing it pointed out was we have duplicate validation. I don't think I noticed that, but you can see we validated question 1 2 times. Apparently we did not validate question 2. And I'll confess, you guys wouldn't do this because you're better than me, but I might be guilty of doing this copy pasty thing and being a little rushed with my testing. And this could, in some scenarios, leak itself out into production. Now, I know you would never do that, but you can see how it could happen as an innocent mistake. And I find it interesting that ChatGPT, which apparently is a pretty good ColdFusion programmer, can figure this out from static code. So let's look at what else it found. Ooh, SQL injection risk. A chat after my own heart. All right. So not only does it say this is a problem, but it offers copy-pasty code to fix it with the correct SQL types. Beautiful. Remember, the AI is not going to take my job, but it is going to make it a lot easier. Email validation may be insufficient. Oh, I think it is insufficient. Default values might mask input errors. Oh, they might. Potential HTML injection. Interesting. And then it gives me a fix and then summarizes all of this. Code reviews. You are a thing of the past. So if you end up stumbling through legacy code and love fixing it, then this is not for you. But if you just want to get it done so you can go work on the fun stuff, I think this gave us a pretty good start. Now, there are other ways to do this. So let's open up. This is VS Code. Every single coding thing these days has an AI. In fact, I was going to use JetBrains AI as part of my presentation, but 2 or 3 days ago, they released Junie. And if you want to see what Junie is, Dan Vega, our buddy from back in the day, has a really nice video about it. But basically, it blew up the JetBrains part of this talk. So took it out because I can't keep up with AI. But look, this is VS Code. I'm going to kind of pop up this window here, and I'm going to say the very same thing. Oops, let's get the correct prompt. Because this is in an IDE, I don't have to be as explicit. Like, it knows the context that it's in is software. And so I'm just going to say, examine the code, report logical deficiencies or bugs. Now, there is a free version of CoPilot, and you're limited to n number of usages, let's call it, per month, and then it resets. You can pay for it. Like, I pay for ChatGPT. I pay for Gemini. I think ChatGPT cost me $20 a month, and I would literally give up every subscription I own before I gave that one up because I use it so much. So you can see here, it found very similar things. It's told me that this question is duplicated, but because it's kind of in my IDE, I can press apply an editor, and then it will now be fixed. Isn't that beautiful? So it's showing me this is the line before, this is the line after. I agree, this is exactly what I want. Hey, we're writing code. Now look, once again, you people are better than me, right? But I am a terrible typist. I'm the one that decided in typing class that I could type fast enough to pass just using my 2 fingers on each hand. And that was one of the many stupid things I did in my life. And as such, typing is not my favorite thing to do. Given that, you ask, why did I get into software development? It's for the money. I'm not kidding. But I don't have to type. I can now tell my junior developer what to do, and it happily goes off and does it. So we could continue with this process, but I think you kind of get the point. Let's see what's next. Now, Jim Priest, who is probably one of my favorite people in the world, says, I wish it was a bit better at converting from tags to script. Isn't that funny that that is, in fact, our very next thing to do? So I'm going to pull up some more code and put it on the screen for you. It's going to look shockingly similar to what we just worked on. Let's get this out of the way. We do not need it at the moment. So this is the code. Go ahead and scan it again while I get my prompt going for you. What we're going to say is refactor this legacy code to use object-oriented principles and rewrite code using CF script. Now, I'm going to do this in ChatGPT because there's another feature there which you might find interesting. So I'm going to say open in a canvas. And then let's get our code file once again. Now, a canvas is like its own little IDE. Let's see if it really does it this time. Beautiful. Now, if you notice here, it's opened up this little window for me to work in. And it's rewriting the code on the fly. Like ChatGPT loves to kind of stream like this, and it can be really fun to watch it, but sometimes I wish it would just get down to business and hurry up. So now it has made an attempt at converting this code. And the beautiful part about Canvas is you can now interact with this on a global level. Like I could say, review this code. And now it'll look at it again. And this is what I find really funny. If you tell it to do a thing and then tell it to like do quality control on its own thing, it'll often come up with better ways to do things. And then I kind of wonder, why didn't it do that from the beginning? And then I kind of wonder, like, how does this actually work anyway? And why shouldn't I just be happy with it? But sometimes the point is the first thing you get out of it is not always the best. And so now you can see that it's taken a pretty good shot at this. And it's possible that we have preferences or stylistic things, or it could be dead wrong. Remember, I literally gave it a 1-sentence prompt. You can make it better if you needed to, but I'll point out, look, it used parameterized queries. Wasn't that nice? All right. So, but according to our schedule, it's 10:30 a.m. and we've gotten quite a bit of work done, given that we've only been in this presentation for 27 minutes and I went through 15 minutes of slides. You can kind of see how much more coffee you get to drink during the day and how many more pictures of funny cats you'll get to look at. So let's look at everyone's favorite topic, regular expressions. I'm going to give you some input data. And just for fun, I'm going to open up regex 101 because I think they do a much better job here. So this is test data. You see, it kind of looks like phone numbers. And everyone loves writing regular expressions. That's why one of the more popular features on my blog was a regular expression tutorial. And I had a lot of fun writing that. You know why I did that? Because Steve Nelson told me I didn't know regular expressions, and he was right. So I showed him, didn't I? Anyway, what we're going to do is tell the LLM to make up a regular expression for us. So I say, give me a regular expression that will match phone numbers in this format where X is a digit. And we push the button and see what it comes up with. Beautiful. So let's take this, go to regex 101 and paste it up top. Now, wasn't that a lot nicer than trying to figure out this arcane syntax? Like, I never remember these things. I always have to look them up. Why look them up if the chat can do it for you? So let's look at a different pattern. We're going to use images at this point. You can see some of these are .pdfs. Some are JPEGs. Some are tar files. Some are JPEGs.old. Some have the word JPEG in there, but it's not a file extension. So we need a regular expression to match. Now, let's say I already have one. So I'm going to paste in this one. And if you look, it's matching too many things. Like you really shouldn't pull this backup file or this or this or JPEG extra. So it's a little bit too greedy. How do we get it to fix this? Well, if your answer is ask it to, we would just say, have a regex, and it's a little bit too greedy. It's matching too many things. I only need it to match for certain file extensions. Let's see what it comes up with. So what I like about this is it's telling me what's wrong. Now, remember, we are the human in the middle. At some point, we can't just abdicate knowledge to the chat or the LLM. So it telling us what the original problem was should help us. Consider it a form of continuing education. So it's come up with this. Let's actually test it and see if it's any better. Remember, this one had issues. It had 31 matches, and it shouldn't be 31. Now it's down to 15. That's pretty good, right? So just think of, think of your day. If you had to fix this regular expression, you might spend 10, 12 minutes messing around with it. That's not a lot of time. But taken over the course of a year, if I can do it in 30 seconds, that's better. Because not only is it time efficient, but it's context efficient. I don't have to really get rid of the context I had in my head to get this fixed and load up a new context. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's work on some data migrations. That's always a fun one. And let's use Gemini for this one because we haven't used Gemini yet. It's over there feeling sad. So I've got a file here that consists of blog CFC create statements. And I've got a file here that consists of WordPress create statements. Now, as a confession, remember, I know no one would do this, but I had a blog CFC instance for a very, 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 very long time, and I loved it. And at some point, it became outdated, and there were no real updates happening, and that's fine. Like, software is what it is, but, I felt bad because I knew I was leaving myself open for security risks. And I wanted to move to WordPress, but I could not bring myself to figure out how to map the data from blog CFC to WordPress. Like, it's not the same. And so I ended up paying for rather expensive hosting for way longer than I should have because I just didn't want to figure this out. So one day I asked ChatGPT what it knew about blog CFC, and it mentioned that, it was created by Ray Camden and it was marvelous and wonderful. And Ray was a great guy. And I was like, okay, it knows its stuff. Can it migrate for me? The answer is it can. So I've never actually tried this in Gemini. We're going to try it together. So I say, you're a schema migration assistant helping migrate data from a source database to a target database. I'll upload, create table definitions from both systems. Your tasks are to map source tables and fields to the equivalents, identify any fields that need transformation or are missing, write example, insert into select statements so we can kind of transform and move the data, and then note any assumptions or potential data loss issues. So let's see what it comes up with. Come on, Gemini, I believe in you. Okay, now notice how much faster Gemini is. If you asked me about Gemini a month ago, I would say that it's pure garbage because it really was clunky, inaccurate, annoying. But they released an update a couple of weeks ago. It is really improved. And then this is the 2.0 model. I don't know if you know about models, but think of them like versions. They're good at different stuff. This 2.5 one's even better. Once again, like don't form your opinions about LLMs right now. Every 20 minutes, it's different. So here's what it says. It's told me what categories in blog CFC move into WordPress equivalents. All this is beautiful and wonderful. If I cared, I would read all of these for you. It's giving me examples, but let's just say, put this Now, looky there, folks. I spent ages working on this, and then it turns out you can just ask a magic box to do it for you. So, you'd want to test this. You'd want to check it out. It's complaining this password migration is insecure. It did kind of point that out. It pointed out a few things, actually. Pretty surprising what it was able to understand from static analysis. But I was able to do my migration and got everything on WordPress just happily. And, I think this is a great example of where it can save you time. And if you're like me, paying for money to host things you shouldn't do. But it can do a lot more than just migrate data. So let's have it analyze a table. And let me put this in VS Code so you can just see the table definitions. You'll notice this also comes from Blog CFC. And, I want you to go ahead and scan this and just see that this could use normalization and design improvement. So what would you say if I ask you to do this? We want it to come up with some options for us. Hopefully you had time to take a look at that. So I'm going to go back to ChatGPT just for fun. And I will say, you know what? Let's go to Claude. Once again, we're going off script here, folks. So I say you're a database design expert helping clean up and optimize the schema. I'm going to paste a create table statement, or maybe even some more table statements. I want you to figure out normalization problems, suggest design improvements, and then provide a revised version of the schema. Notice this, use a mentoring tone. Be nice to me, chat. Like, this is the best we can do. And there's my table statement. So crossing fingers, pressing buttons. Claude is really good at writing and software stuff. So I have high hopes here. It's also good at asking for money. So if you use it too many times, it'll lock you down for a couple hours. And, I could pay my $20 here too, but at some point, got to draw a line in the sand of how many LLMs I'm going to pay for, right? But is what it is. So let's see what it says. It doesn't like the convention. That's kind of true. It is talking about some of the column types we've chosen. That makes sense too. Yeah, okay, this is all really nice. Now this is interesting. Look, it's suggesting some indexes. And, you saw what I did. I did not tell it this is a blog. I didn't give it any context about the system it was in, but it picked up on the fact that based on the name of the column, there would probably be some sort of date-based query and sorting needs, and you should have an index. That's interesting. Once again, as the quote human in the middle, maybe I disagree, but it's nice that it came up with this. And so here's the improved version of it. Now, once again, you can really create yourself a world of trouble by just slapping this in your system. You must think through what it provides, but I often, you've heard of rubber duck debugging. Well, what about LLM driven development? It's kind of like that, right? All right. So hopefully that was impressive. It certainly impressed me, but you know what? There's more things we can do here. So one thing that I really like using chat for is taking data that's in one format and turning it into another format. So what would I mean by that? Take, for example, I don't know, a screenshot. This is a screenshot. Why do we have a screenshot, you might ask? Well, maybe that's just what we actually have. And we don't want to sit here and retype all this. At least if you remember my lesson about being a bad typist, I don't want to do that. What if the ChatGPT instance could pull that off for us? Let's find out if it can. Now, remember, this is not a lot of typing, right? But keep in mind, I'm screen sharing and I can't put in too much text or you won't even be able to read it. So let's upload our screenshot. Let's simply ask it to pull this stuff in text. It says you're an assistant that extracts structured and useful information from screenshots, identify and summarize, extract checklist items, data or action items, suggest how this could be used in a dev task, use a professional and concise tone. And I uploaded my image, and looky there, folks. Not only did it parse it correctly, but it pulled in a checklist that I could then use. And maybe I copy this and send it to someone else and copy this and put it in, my release notes. what I do could be endless, but I was able to take a very flat image and turn it into action, and in just a matter of seconds. So that's pretty impressive. I like that a lot. And that was our 2 o'clock task. What are we going to do for 3 o'clock? Let's build a tic-tac-toe game. Why tic-tac-toe? Because I think building enterprise apps on demand is boring. So let's see if it can actually do this. How will we start this? Let's just say build a tic-tac-toe game. And we'll ask CoPilot to do it. So one thing to keep in mind, if you use the public ChatGPT instance, the web one that you've seen me use the most, you don't really have a lot of control over what happens to what you put in that chat. Now, if you use Gemini, it'll tell you at the bottom that your information is never used to train the model. And that can be interesting, right? There's this big concern right now over what do you do over IP controls. And I think historically what we've all done is, as long as it makes our life easy, we'll give away nearly anything, right? But our companies don't necessarily want to go that route. However, something to keep in mind is maybe you want your information to end up in the LLM. Like maybe think of like SEO, but for chat. So, there's not really a great way to think through all this right now, but you will probably at this point be told at work what LLMs you can use. And also, I kind of think personally that sometimes we care too much about our code being put into a chat, because think about this, like, is my survey code that important? Is it really? So let's look at what it came up with. It says, here's a canvas version of tic-tac-toe. Let's make a new file. Okay. Oh, it's a TypeScript file. Okay, that's going to be interesting, because guess what? I don't have TypeScript installed, but this is going to give us a phenomenal thing to think about. So if I go to run this, it's not going to work. Need to save this file. And then we need to run it. What do I need to do to install TypeScript? Here's another common thing. Remember, we used to like Google around looking for blogs and reading blogs and all that. We don't have to do that anymore. You can use the chats for these things. So give me the command. You may think I'm lame, but I don't actually care. Now, notice NPM is not installed. So what do? Do we think for ourselves? No, we don't want to do that. It says, what do I do? You are correct. So now you can stay right in your editor window and not only like come up with what you need to solve problems, but get it to actually write your code for you. Isn't this what we always wanted? So beyond code generation, beyond fixing and analyzing code, you can also think of it as a helpful assistant to go out on the big wide web and get the exact answer that you want. So keep that in mind. All right. Not going to bore you with installing this and running tic-tac-toe, but I do want you to see the workflow of getting things done. Let's see what's coming up next. Let's work on an API together. So if I say, if I act like a moron, which won't be too difficult, and I have this API, and I paste in the API command for curl, it's going to fail. Now, it failed with a strange error. And the reason why this failed is because I did not escape this issue. Now, if I say, go to my chat and ask it to fix this, we'll use ChatGPT again, just because it's here. Hey, this fails. Why? And then it'll go figure out what's wrong with the API. And so let's see if it's right. Now I have a very different error. It says you do not have permission to perform this action. So now we need to figure that out. Let's say that we really want to be silly. And remember, screenshot this API key so that you can go nuts with all this free patent data. But we're going to make it write our code for us. Now it fails with authentication issues. Notice how I don't fix this issue. I'm going to leave that alone because the LLM is smart enough to know me by now and it can handle typos. Here is my API key. Give me something I can paste into PowerShell. Let's see if it did it. No. Let's see. It needs to be in curl format, doesn't it? Make. Oh, it did it. It did it. It did it. Let's try it. And then I'll end up with this command. And this has pulled the content from the US patent system and given us a nice output. So let's see what happens of how exactly deep we can get this. Let me look up the docs here. USPTO docs API. Yeah. It seems to want to pull this from my local environment, and I do not want that. So let's tell it about the docs. Here are the docs. Now what we want this to do is fix the code. Getting 403 errors. No, sorry, I'm ahead of myself. We want it to not, now that we're past that, we want it to do a proper filtered search. And I'm going to give it, let's see what it does. It should use a Q parameter here and figured all this out for us. So let's see. It figured out the Q parameter. It figured out the fields. It really likes the syntax. Let's see if it works. A parameter cannot be found that matches X. I think it cut off. Let's try again. It is unhappy with me. You know why? I have this in a wrong shell. Change this to work PowerShell. And we'll take the one we had before. Now we'll ask for it in curl. And let's see what it does. We could spend a while on this. We're not gonna. So as you've seen here, it can fail tremendously, especially when people are watching. So now what I'm going to do to finish out my workday is I'm going to write release notes for our system. So we're going to go back to our friend ChatGPT and tell it to, based on all the work that we've done today, come up with release notes. I say you're a release note assistant. Your tasks are to group the changes by type, write a concise audience-friendly summary for each group, optionally generate a professional release note or a changelog section in Markdown. Use a professional and clean tone. And there we go. So we could very easily paste this into our final daily report or in the release notes for our system. And now you can see it's used every single thing that we've done today and put it in place. So with that, let me turn this over into questions. Charlie, can you put the slide deck on the screen?
When you say the slide deck, what do you mean?
PowerPoint. Oh, that would be my job, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a really nice thank you slide, and I just want everyone to see it.
There you go.
So, what questions did I miss?
So far, there's really just one kind of comment. Wasn't so much a question. There you go.
Yeah. There are so many different things that you could use. There's even, I don't know if you've heard of vibe coding yet. You can't really get too far without seeing that. So, you know, I think Claude is a little better at ColdFusion and programming tasks in general. But once again, I think a lot of this depends on what your company will let you access. Part of the reason why CoPilot's as popular as it is and as rudimentary as it is because it doesn't share data back and forth between other clients.
And there were some comments and questions where answers were offered. So while you see that question, let me share with you first the answer that I offered to that. So again, the question was, are you comfortable having workflow? And you eventually did talk about IP, but I offered a different response. And if people didn't catch it, there are now local implementations of such AI LLMs, both free and commercial. And I'd said, perhaps you'd talk about that, but I don't think you did. So any thoughts on local LLMs?
Well, I think like the term local is an interesting one. I would just say that there are plenty of opportunities to use LLMs that are past the IT governance. They protect your IP. So would you want to use like ChatGPT the way I did? Maybe. But if your company wants the ultimate protection, they've probably purchased something that gives them that good feeling. Like I think we really don't know what these things are really doing.
Yep.
Right. I mean, there's no way to tell. There's no observability. You're trusting a remote thing. Like setting up a local LLM, I think that's a pretty daunting task. Like what do you have in mind? Like setting up Llama for yourself?
Yes. So Llama's an example. And look here, I said beyond searching for info, here's a tool to help use local variants. It's called lmstudio.ai. And then my point was, aside from the tool, it helps consider some of the options. So if one were to visit that site, you'll see it lists a few of the commonly
Let's
available
pull that
local.
up. Let me see if I can get it on my screen.
Sure.
LM Studio. Was it LM Studio? Like if you listen very closely, you can hear the sound of 2 new LLMs being born. So, you'll want to, this is a little pro tip. You'll want to find some kind of person that you respect that pays attention to all these things and follow them through a newsletter or LinkedIn, because it literally moves so quick.
Amen.
That's why I said earlier, don't formulate your opinions too early, because they're just outdated the minute they come around. So what do we have here?
Yeah, slide up to the top. The point was in the second sentence there, it says download and run. So there's Llama, DeepSeek, Mistral, Phi. So there are, my point was, rather than go looking for them, A, this is a tool that tells you which ones are currently they're aware of. B, it's a tool that lets you help easily implement them locally. Kevin, by the way, just commented that he's been using it. So that's good to hear. I haven't explored it to see what's free and commercial. And if you scroll back up to the top, you'll see that it's a Windows thing. And I get it. Some of you don't use Windows, use Mac or Linux. So anyway, you can get such LLMs to run locally as Docker containers, as downloadable things. There's just, again, one can explore all that to their heart's content.
Oh, that's interesting. I tell you, in 5 years, this is all going to be very, very different. But for now, like if you're the kind of person that likes to be on the bleeding edge, you're probably super happy. If you're the kind of person that wants everything to be like steady state, you're probably not very happy.
No, you might want to hang out for that trough to come and then
That's right.
the return after the trough. So there's Jim saying, yes, data security. This is when you were talking about it. He said data security is also something to consider if you're using this at work. So be aware what you're pasting in and allowing access in your editor. So absolutely be careful about that. And then Jim added a little comment there about wrong answers, prompted to start over, take a different approach.
Yeah, sometimes it is down the wrong path, and sometimes it's out of context window, and it's not good at telling you that. That's why I mentioned earlier, I said it's non-deterministic, and you just have to watch it. It's like a toddler. It's like a very smart toddler.
Yep. And then here was
another reason why this is a good thing for us software developers. It's not going to take over, because you can't let production be non-deterministic, can you? So an aggregator where you could punch in your prompt and feed it to several LLMs. So there's a tool called Perplexity that allows you to kind of pick what tool that you want to send the request to. I don't know about testing. Like I just kind of use them individually. I've used CoPilot the least.
And then Kevin said about LM Studio that it would run, but it's slow. And yeah, when you're on your own machine, you don't have the benefit of the cloud servers running these things. So it's going to strain your own machine.
Yeah, I mean, these H100 processors are they like $100,000?
Right. So we won't all be able to benefit from those. But anyway, just wanted to point out that for some people, this talk, and when Dan presented this topic, we had some back and forth chatting about it. And I said, there's just so many different people with different preferences for AIs, and people with different preferences for editors and different languages, and then local versus remote. So we had anticipated that these things would come up, and he has, modified the talk to try to at least show a range of things and point you to resources where you can explore more on your own. As he said, it's early days for this stuff. And I appreciate what you've done, showing what you did do. I'm sure some people seeing that stuff will go, oh, I didn't even think about that. And others will go, oh, there's 5 more things it could do that you didn't even mention. So we'll throw out that Dan has said that he's open to doing additional talks, 1 or more additional talks on things. If you guys have any things you'd like to see. And of course, if anybody here goes, I have a cool idea I'd like to present, we absolutely welcome anybody to present. And it doesn't even have to be ColdFusion specific. Thank you, Dan, for showing a couple of CF specific things. But, one doesn't have to do that. This I knew would be beneficial, even if he didn't show it with CF stuff. So,
yeah, since we're using StreamYard now, which is pretty cool,
Yep.
me and Jim used to do this fun thing at the user group where we would do like a show and tell day.
Yep.
And everybody who wanted to would show like
Yep.
I don't know, a few minutes of something that they did. And
Yep.
I felt like those were really fun presentations. And so if folks here wanted to do something like that, you know, showing a 5 or 10 minute thing you're doing is a lot less daunting than coming up with an hour talk. So if that's of interest, I'm sure we could get Charlie to set one up and share something he's doing, and anyone else that wanted to turn. And, you know, like I say, it's a new industry, so I think we could all learn something from each other. If that's of interest, make sure you get your voice heard and we'll put it together.
And that presentation or link you said you were going to share, I commented earlier on that, you know, I wouldn't be able to get it out to everybody because there's people that are going to be watching who we won't know, but we can get it in as a comment on the YouTube.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like, if you Google this, you'll find it.
Okay.
I guarantee it's worth what you paid for it. But yeah, you know, appreciate you guys for showing up and interacting today.
Yes, sir. And thank you for giving the talk. And yeah, you're right on time. You're good, man. He's a pro. He's a pro. And thanks everybody for your comments. And a couple more have come in there, but I don't think anything is a question for you. So if you have any, you know, we'll take one more minute. If you have a question, ask us to wait and then write your question. In the meantime, I'm sure Dan can riff on something.
Yeah.
Tell us a dad joke. You got the gray hair now. I'm sure you've got a pile of dad jokes.
Well, it's funny you say gray hair. Like at one point I thought the lady who cuts my hair was messing with me and just throwing someone else's hair in my lap. And it turns out that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah. Life goes on. Obladi, oblada. Brah. Yes. Mine's grayer, so I'm not calling out anything that I don't suffer myself. I'm sure many of us here we know each other from many years ago. That's right.
What did Bob say?
Bob. I've tried stuff with ChatGPT. Quite impressed. We definitely checked the output. Is that what you meant?
Bob, we've met. That or you have an evil twin. I'm not sure which it is. I miss the conferences. I really do. Those were the years, honestly. It's such a great time.
And going to CF Camp in Munich is fun.
What time of year is that?
That's at the end of May.
Oh, a beautiful time to be
in Germany. Lovely time to be in Germany. And then there's the Into the Box, which is at the beginning of May, actually next week. And that's in DC. And that's a lovely time to be in DC. So yeah, 2 lovely trips coming up for me, for sure. And then CF Summit in September in Vegas. And it doesn't matter what the temperature is because we'll be inside all day.
Yeah, good old Vegas. If I never went to Vegas again, I'd be a happy man.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy if they would have these anywhere because I don't ever go out. But I know it's other people, they would like to get out and enjoy.
It's a great place for a convention. I will say that really close to the Strip is this state park called Red Rocks.
Yeah.
And it's not too hard to get out there with a cab or someone you know. And it's so refreshing to see what looks like what I would imagine Mars looks like.
Yes.
After you've just been in like Captain Kookyville, Vegas. They don't even have slot machines at Red Rocks. They have them at the airport.
For now.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can bring your phone and just do it on your phone now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it looks like that's it. There's no more questions outstanding. So let's let Dan get on to the rest of his day, and everybody else, y'all enjoy yourselves and reach out, you know, either comments on the YouTube video, or you can also offer comments on the ColdFusion Meetup. Both are ways you could reach out. Or Dan, did you offer anything? I didn't catch this, Dan. Did you offer any way for people to reach out to you? Do you have any publicly available means?
You're probably best going to my website. I've got to contact me. You can catch me on LinkedIn. I'm on there a fair bit. And
And that was David.
No, just you can Google that. I mean, if you Google Dan Wilson, you're gonna think I'm a professional baseball player, and you'd be right. But I'm also the lead singer for Semisonic. So where do I find the time to do all this AI stuff? I don't know, but it's important to stay busy, folks.
And limber. All right. Well, let's let you go, and we'll talk to everybody next time.
Have a good day. Thanks for hosting, Charlie.
You betcha, man. Talk to y'all later. See you soon.